Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the London session recap for Euro Dollar on Monday, the 15th of August 2022. So, hopefully, if you've watched the weekly market breakdown, you will sort of have seen my outlook on the current price action in a lot more depth. So, I don't want to spend super long on sort of the high time frame outlook. But quick recap: daily, we're obviously bearish. We have pulled back up to the EQ of the prior swing legs. That means we have reached premium prices, which essentially means there's an increased probability that the daily swing lower high will form because it's pulled back to good value for the bears to step in and potentially target this weak daily swing low. Obviously, we have a bit more refined supply from within here. This isn't the most amazing zone in the world. There's no inducement, it didn't sweep. There are higher probability zones above, but price does not have to reach those in order to form a swing lower high. You know, at the end of the day, this did break to a swing breaker structure, so we keep things simple. It's a pretty decent area to at least expect a decent reaction, or with the potential that we may go on to break those lows. But as I was saying on the weekly market breakdown, we don't get true confirmation that this swing pullback has finished forming and we're ready to get that next impulsive pro trend swing leg down to the downside until we get that bearish internal breaker structure, because essentially the internal structure has shifted bullish to facilitate that swing pullback. But once we get that bearish eyeboss there, at this point, we get a break and close below that low, then we have true structural alignment because the internal structure has then shifted back bearish in line with the overall swing structure, right? And then we can go on to target that swing low. But of course, we don't have to wait for that. We can get into shorts to anticipate that's going to happen before that happens. It's just that's the framework that once we do get that, then we have true confirmation that we're probably going to come out and take this low. So there was always the possibility that this reaction from this leg could just be to facilitate a small internal pullback into this level or somewhere within this range, right? Expecting this low may hold to then continue that further move. As things stand, we are starting off with quite a bit of strong momentum. This is obviously very, very corrective here, so there's a ton of sell-side liquidity. So I wouldn't be overly surprised now if this is the move that does go on to break that low. But let's not get into predictions, right? We're just aware of both scenarios. One is that we've come into here, we could be ready now to go and take out the low. Two, let's see if the lower time frame starts to shift from within here. We can see some, real solid shifts, not just like an M1 chalk or an M15 chalk, but start to really see structure break to the upside, whether we get that M15 bullish boss, depending on how you map your structure. But we really want to start seeing some serious commitment before I'd be a bit more convinced that we are actually going to go up and take that high. So yeah, we do have daily demand here, but this is nothing significant, right? All it's caused is a break of this high, right? This is the supply that's a lot stronger, right? This has led to a swing breaker structure. It's in the premium of the pullback. So this sort of supply is much more likely to overpower just this internal demand. So yeah, for now, we'll have to see if that's going to be strong enough to push through here, but we can just use the lower time frames to help guide us, right? Because the 4-hour chart, again, had this in quite a big, large bearish swing range. We pull well above the EQ of the 4-hour leg. We have tapped into that daily supply. Again, not super refined 4-hour supply, which you would typically expect there to be a high probability of that swing pullback forming from. But yeah, it still remains to be seen. We have the bullish internal structure here where we can see a series of higher highs, higher lows, and higher highs. So the internal expectation will be that price is coming in. This internal low, high low may hold, right? And we could see that movement to the upside, right? So that's the expectation we can still run with. Once we get, or if we get a bearish internal breaker structure, just like I was saying on the daily chart, then we expect those 4-hour internal bearish ranges to hold until we take out that 4-hour weak swing low there. So zooming into that 4-hour structure a little bit more, this internal range. Remember what I was saying is, yes, this can be a strong high low to go, but that doesn't mean we just have to expect that it definitely will, especially when we're coming off those high time frame levels. Also, we have now the internal structure of the internal structure, right, which we can see we're coming down. So really what you want to see is those shift bullish. So if this orange line structure I've drawn here, this internal with the internal, if this stays bearish, right, and we come up again and we stay bearish, then we'd expect those bearish ranges to hold if it's going to come down and take out this low here. However, if at some point the internal shifts bullish, right, then what do we expect? Then we expect that larger internal pullback is now finished, right? This high low may be holding, and then we'd expect these internal, or we would call it small internal, that's a bit easier to think, will dead stay bullish, right, until we take out these highs here. So that's kind of what I was trying to say in the daily chart. Although this is a strong 4-hour low, that's basically the daily internal low. right? When we're selling off with such strong momentum, we're coming off that daily supply. The overall bigger picture is heavily, heavily bearish, right? It's this bigger overall corrective pullback. We're expecting that move, right? A ton of sell side liquidity being built with these sort of, relatively equal lows down here. Very corrective move, right? I wouldn't be too surprised if this kind of just continues to smash through this now, and we might get a bit of a deeper pullback if we get that internal breaker structure, and then we could be coming for these lows. Okay, that would kind of be what I'm probably expecting to happen with the amount of momentum we're seeing. But like I said, right, if we start to, I don't know, potentially come down here, I think this is a bit unlikely now, but get something like that, we start to see that kind of a bit more of a convincing bullish shift in the internal structure here, that smaller internal structure. That's when I'll have a lot more confidence then to start taking longs, like trying to target that move. But for now, I think, just sort of, continuing to follow that bearish order flow and see if we can trade through. Now, coming into London today, we're obviously coming down into approaching this level. But as we were saying, there's no inducement. I mean, it's swept liquidity by a pip, but in terms of like a 4-hour zone, that's basically equal lows, right? Sitting right there. So, and also it was from CPI news, and typically those big news announcements, those candles, just when you get these big, strong, obvious pushes, they almost nearly always fail in my experience. Again, I don't have hardcore collected data on this, but just from what I've seen, I hate trading from them. They just, typically ends up failing when you get that one big straight push and price comes back down. There's just two obvious levels and they end up usually getting smashed. So I'm not really surprised at all that we push through. This is zone that we're currently in. I was pretty surprised if this holds, because as you can see, if I get rid of it, like this range is as good as mitigated for me. But I'm aware it's there. There's still unmitigated levels, but I'd probably expect price to push through. And then we have this extreme wick down here, which again, I don't really like, because what I like to trade from is unmitigated single candle pivot zones. Whereas this, like the majority of the orders in this candle has already been filled. It's just a wick that's just left. So if we do come down here, I'd probably just expect maybe a bit of a reaction, and then we may smash through. So this is the type of level for longs. I'd much rather see a strong bullish shift from here, whether that's on the M15 or even if we get some nice 4-hour internal structure, something like that. Then I'd be like, okay, maybe we're coming up from here. So now that we're kind of starting to break through with a decent amount of momentum, like this is all quite corrective. It's looking more and more likely at this stage. I think we'll get some small reactions and just continue to push down through. I want to see a much more convincing shift now to think that that's going to happen. That's really about it for what I can add. I kind of went into this in a lot more depth on the weekly market breakdown. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that just yet, I would encourage you guys to take a look at that. So then the M15. Now you could have that mapped a few ways. I know some people still have their swing low down here, and you look at the big structure. That's absolutely cool, but obviously then you just need to also look at the internal structure too. For me, it's more of like a 4-hour level, so I just find it a bit more simple to zoom in on more of these current price action. As we can see, we had that swing lower low, swing lower high, and then we broke down here, and then had that swing pullback. Okay, so again, coming into London, if I bring price back a little bit, we were around pre-Frankfurt around here, this point here. So what am I expecting at this point? I'm expecting these lows to go, right? This low has not achieved anything. It hasn't broken any structures to the upside. This is super, super weak. So do I want to be looking for longs at this stage? Absolutely not. The only place I was really going to be considering longs is as we start to come into this 4-hour POI. But as I said in the weekly market breakdown and in the pre-session analysis, like really all I'm expecting at this point is a bit of an internal pullback. So we come in, and then if there's enough risk to reward to play the internal pullback, I'll play that with the potential that it might then shift bullish, and then we can get that. But at a bare minimum, I'd just be expecting that internal pullback into these levels. So I would only play that if there's enough risk to reward, and obviously if you get a clean entry model. But like if we came in here like this with the M15 structure, and there's like hardly any risk to reward to get long from within here to target that high and that supply, I'm not going to bother taking it, right? You may as well just wait for order flow to shift in your favor, where you get price come in and you get something very obvious in the M15, whether it's an M15 chock, but ideally like a clear sort of IBOS or even swing boss, that would be a lot more ideal. Then you can start to trade it, right? You don't have to be jumping in trying to catch a falling knife, especially when you consider, right, there was no inducement on this 4-hour POI, etc., relatively equal lows. We're coming off that daily supply, right? That big level up here, which we haven't drawn on the M15, but essentially, right, this is the bigger move that we're expecting to happen. So yes, the internal structure could stay bullish at this point. It's poorly drawn, but I want to see, especially with the momentum and where we're coming off, I want to see a lot more confirmation, right? See that shift now to convince us of that, right? We don't have to trade against the overall bigger bearish picture. So that's why for longs, just kind of got my alert set down here. Definitely not going to look for a long until at least the zone is hit. And if it just came into this 4-hour zone, again, I have to trade from an M15 POI, right? So I'd want to see at least an M15 chock to give me that M15 POI before I can even think about longs, unless it hits this zone first, okay? And any of these, right, these are just random zones for me that haven't really done anything, right? This would kind of be the only level. And this is what I explained on the weekly market breakdown, like a level from here. When you come in, this is just in the middle of the leg, hasn't really done anything. We expect internal pullbacks, but when you're trying to trade against all of this, I'd rather wait for at least an M15 chop in the recent price action before wanting to try and capture that move. So again, yeah, if price comes into here, I'm just not bothered at all to try and look to long from that. So if we zoom into this a little bit more, see this wasn't a swing high yet because I hadn't broken any structure. So we kind of had these levels. Again, that wasn't anything because I hadn't broken anything. And we're kind of already selling off coming into Frankfurt. So we played it forward a little bit, right, just messing around. And then we broke down and we started to pull back. So at this point, obviously we broke through. We didn't have the boss confirmed because we need a candle closure. Even if that's your internal low rather than a swing low, you still need a candle closure. This is where kind of, it's more on the aggressive side. Again, aggressive is a very relative term. But what I'm thinking when I'm looking at this, especially when you get on the M5, is this is probably a pretty decent level that, with the intraday flow, London session / European volume starting to pick up. Like typically, you don't get price pulling back that deep, and you can just kind of start to see this selling off. But it's all relative to the current market environment with everything that's going on, right? So as we've come up into here, this high has held, right, and we've just been selling off aggressively, right? We're coming off that daily supply. We've had the daily pullback most likely. Everything's starting to shift bearish. That's the current environment, but maybe you want to put your foot on the gas a little bit more and follow those levels. But what you have to accept the risk is if you're going to trade from a level like this, and it is a valid supply level because the candle did actually just about close below that candle's low, so it's valid supply. Is it a strong level of supply? No, because it hasn't caused the candle closure below. But from an M5, if you look at the M5 now, you can see it's a lot clearer, right? We can refine it there. This is the type of level in which you may want to trade from, right? It did sweep liquidity on the M5. We'll use this. All right, so if you're sort of, again, aggressively is a relative term, but if you're going to keep following that, right, it makes sense as to why you may get a quick move from within here. But what you have to accept and why it's lower probability, again, relative to what we could wait for, is that once we get that break of structure, which we haven't even had at this point, but this is basically that one leg. And even if you just view it as this leg here, this is in the middle of the leg. And very often these levels get used for inducement for liquidity for these higher levels up here. And that's why after the break of structure, what do we expect? We expect that deeper pullback, or even if you're just looking at that internal level there, we'd expect that internal pullback up into here. And it's just a lot more riskier to keep kind of aggressively following that near order flow. But I think there's logic behind it if you want to do it. It's just a bit more lower probability. But this is the type of environment where you can read it, where you might want to follow the order flow a little bit more aggressively. Now, at this point, it became a little bit more higher probability because if we look at the M15, this is why you should always be reassessing what's going on the higher time frames. But we did actually get that break of structure. But what does that break of structure mean? Well, for me, I had this as swing structure. So this then becomes the swing lower high because it obviously led to the break of swing structure. But what do we expect after a swing break of structure? We expect a swing pullback. So price could have come up to here. It could have come all the way up to here. And that's why I was kind of thinking, at this point, Monday morning, do I kind of really want to force it from here? We're kind of coming into demands. Risk rewards is not that amazing. Could I take it for a quick move? Potentially. Maybe on another day, if I was feeling a bit more, had a bit more of a risk appetite, maybe I would have gone for it. I did debate setting the order because I was basically looking at M5. I really liked how the M5 was looking. But I just knew it wasn't the highest probability position in the world or potential position in the world because of the reasons I've just outlined, and kind of viewed that as one leg. And I didn't really want to kind of have a quick reaction, get stopped out, and then price come into here. And that's ultimately why I ended up not setting an order, because I was basically looking to trade that M5 zone, but with a refined M1 entry as the risk entry, just so I could have risk to reward on my side as much as possible if I'm going to take those, slightly, let's say, lower probability positions, because that way if I enter on the M1 zone here within the M5 zone, it's basically an M5 risk entry. EQ entry was what I was meant to say, right? The EQ of the M5 zone. I went for with a 3 pip stop just to be a bit safe because 2.5 was a bit close, and I don't know, maybe it's a bit pointless rounding up to round numbers, but I kind of like to do that 0 or 5, right? And then I could get over 5 to 1 just about to the low there. I think I had it a little bit tighter like that. So I considered that, and then I just ended up cancelling it. Well, I didn't actually set it. I was like lining it up, but didn't end up setting it just because, I've spent the reasons, so I'm going to keep repeating myself. Potentially, if price had to come in and then maybe held it and given me the M1 chop from within there, give me an M1 confirmation entry of that level, then I probably would have ended up being a lot more inclined to take it, because at least you have a bit more confirmation that high is going to hold. But it didn't obviously, fill some decent orders from there from more of the decisional, the decisional flip. that's that level there, right? The M1 level started to sell off, but obviously, there's no M1 CE within here. You'd have to have that logo for the M1 chalk. So I just wasn't interested at this point. I was barely looking at price action. I had my alert set down on the extreme down here just to see how that looks, and on these highs up here, and yeah, just let price do its thing, and it kind of just messed around, I think. Yeah, there's no M1 entry from within here. I know some people were looking at this as a potential flip and shock as it comes down. These perfectly equal lows to target, but for me, that's just way too aggressive. If I'm not going to consider taking this trade, why am I going to try and short down here where it's just you have no protection at all? Because you could get in, price could literally just take that low, and then you get stopped out. I mean, if you're going to super aggressively manage it for break even, maybe, but yeah, for me, this current, where we are, yeah, that for me is about as aggressive as I want to get. I'm not going to try and kind of take these down here, like stick to the bread and butter setups. For me personally, I'm trying to capture the M15 POIs, not so much the M1 stuff. I'm trying to capture the continuation of at least that sort of M5, M15 order flow. Yeah, and then we came into this level down where we're looking, but obviously price is selling off super, super aggressively. So yeah, my alert goes off when the M15 POI comes in. Am I going to just jump in now into any M1 entry? No. Maybe if we got something super, super clear on the M1, where got nice big liquidation, right? Nice big V-shaped reaction, then potentially. But remember, it comes back to what I was saying at the start. What am I expecting that move to be at that point before we obviously push through? I'd only be looking for it to be that M15 pullback, so I can remove my risk, maybe take some profit right here, because it's much more likely that's going to continue. It's only when you start to get true kind of structural shifts, whether that be your swing breaker structure, or even if you're just at least looking for that level to go, start to see some M15 supply fail. Okay, now we've got a bit more confirmation. But even then, yeah, because my swing high or this high, whether this is your swing high or internal high, it's so near at that point, I probably want to see that shift before even really starting to think about longs. But yeah, it ends up just melting straight through. So yeah, that's absolutely cool. And that's why this wouldn't be a level in which I would recommend setting risk entries on either, with coming off the daily supply, with there being no 4-hour inducement, etc., etc. Yeah, it's not the best level to be looking at. So yeah, a bit frustrating. It would have been nice to be in that short when so close, but even if I had to set that entry order anyway, I wouldn't have been tagged in. So it is what it is. We're selling off aggressive now. I've kind of spoken through what I think my sort of thoughts are. For now, maybe I'm getting a bit too sucked into just seeing the momentum that we're seeing, but I just think it's a lot more likely that, with this corrective pullback we've had into this level, it's a lot more likely we're going to see that move now and break down. So I'm quite keen to still be on the lookout for shorts, and I'm happy to kind of trade all of this because I don't really view much of this as significant. Yeah, we're now broken through that inside bar, which really isn't too surprising at all. So this is going to be a level, but I don't like this because it's just a wick, right? Like the distal of this candle has already been mitigated. I can't see this having much of a reaction. So will I want to short when price is in it? No, of course not. But more how I'm doing this is, like I was saying, right, I'd want to see like a clear, ideally on the 4-hour, right, we get like a little 4-hour pullback, price reacts from within here, and then we get that move on the 4-hour chart. Okay, now maybe we're going to start to come up to here, or that kind of move will most likely be like an M15 swing breaker structure to the upside if you have it mapped like me, right? I want to see something very, very convincing off this level. I'm not just going to be keen to jump in on like an M1 entry from them here. Not at all. For now, I see like the short's being higher probability, and I think it's likely will go. But yeah, I'll be cautious seeing how we react from here. And if we do get something very convincing but a shift, okay, then I can start to be on the lookout for longs. But do I want to start buying against all of this? Not really, right? I'm in no position to try and catch the low of this, right? Shorts for me are key. Even though it's against the 4-hour internal structure, because we're coming off this level, right, I think that's the best play for now as things stand. But yeah, let's just react to price and see how it develops. Let's take a look at M15. So yeah, hopefully coming into New York, potentially we might get a bit of a swing pullback into these levels up here. Okay, again, like, do you potentially want to aggressively follow this? Not now, it's not on the low. This was like the start of London, then yeah, you can look for some continuation from within here. Now that we smashed all through this. Right, but it literally all that's done is broken that level, right? So yeah, not really something for me. Let's see how we come into New York, because ideally we get a bit more of a bit more structure forming and get something like that up into these levels, and that would be a lot more ideal. But who knows? Maybe we'll just keep melting and keep dumping into here. But yeah, not really something I'm personally looking at. I'm done for the day. I don't trade New York as things stand at the moment, so. And even if I was, I'd be waiting till nearer midday at least to look to this. But I know some of you trade through London low, so maybe you'll get a quick scalp here. But ideally, I would like to see price pull back up to this 4-hour internal range, supply range from within here. So yeah, just chilling really. Let's see what rest of the week. There's no need to get FOMO, no need to get frustrated. Like no need to force things on any day really, but particularly at the start of the month. I know sometimes you can be very keen coming off the weekend, done your analysis, done your journaling, ready to smash the week, but you're not always going to get the setups or the setups that you need to take. So yeah, hope you guys have a good week, and I'll see you next one. Cheers.